So this morning I wanted to talk a little bit about, there's a text in the Shasekishu, which is known as the collection of stone and sand. They call it a koan collection, but they're a little bit different. They have a different flavor than the koan collections that you're in. For those of you in Mumonkan, we talk a lot, it's talking a lot about the Dharmakaya, and it's very subtle, right? But they're meant to, they're really meant to bring you to Kensho. They're meant to have you work so hard with your reasoning mind to penetrate the deep meaning that eventually your reasoning mind just gets tired and falls over and it just bursts through, right? So what's different about the Shasekishu is that a lot of these koans are very on the surface. So you don't have to dig as hard to find where they're pointing. And they were done by a Japanese teacher called Muju in the late 1200s. So this is about the same time that Mumonkan was being codified, or for those of you who are in the Hekigaroku, the Blue Cliff Record, it's about the same time those are being codified. And they are stories or koans that have been taking place over the prior 600 years. And, you know, we often allow things to obscure our clarity. You know, a lot of students will come to me with questions that they have in their life. And the funny thing is that generally you just have to sit there long enough to let them talk. And they realize that there's not really a decision to be made. The decision's actually what's coming up for them directly in front of them. But you can't open to that very easily because the discursive mind always wants something to do. It wants some say in the process because it always wants to challenge what's coming up with what it would prefer as an outcome or what it prefers as a story. And the deep irony is that, you know, really there's nowhere else to go other than this present moment. Everyone always says, oh, I'm trying to stay present. It's like, well, where else would you go, right? There's nowhere else to go. And yet we have this whole narrative in our minds that we walk into and live as if that is our lives, yeah? And through it, we wind up snoring. They call it delusion. And there's a case in the Shasekishu called Muddy Road. And it goes, Tanzan and Ekido were once traveling together down a muddy road. A heavy rain was still falling. Coming around a bend, they met a lovely girl in a silk kimono and sash, unable to cross the intersection. Come on, girl, said Tanzan at once. Lifting her in his arms, he carried her over the mud. Ekido did not speak again until that night when they reached a lodging temple. Then he could no longer restrain himself. We monks don't go near females, he told Tanzan, especially not young and lovely ones. It's dangerous. Why did you do that? I left the girl there, said Tanzan. Are you still carrying her? So it's not hard. That's what I love about the Shasekishu. It's not hard to apprehend where this is pointing, right? Not putting concepts ahead of compassion, not putting your ideas, right, ahead of what's coming up directly in front of you. And it's easy when that happens for us to read it and then gloss directly over it and say, okay, I saw the lesson, and just keep going. But, you know, the truth is with any koan, penetrating it or having kensho means nothing if you don't see how it applies to your very own lived experience, to your life, right? And so with any of the precepts, if we just look at the text of the precept, if we just look at any idea or any doctrine, and we look at the text of it, we call it dead. So when you come to do koan presentations, a lot of you sometimes want to try to explain to me what it is. And that's called a dead presentation, right? It's lifeless. It means that, you know, if you're still using concepts and ideas, right, to cling to or point to your lived experience, then you're missing the actual lived experience itself. So if we need to get ourselves back on the hook, because there's a tendency that we have to get ourselves off the hook by creating some notion that we can be somehow better or improved by not doing. Not doing is not our practice, right? Our practice is about doing. Our practice is about working skillfully with what's coming up and transforming suffering. We have to be the compassion that's needed. We have to care for the neglected. We have to love the unlovable. Yeah? That's the challenge that comes up. We have to go where we're needed. We have to follow our footsteps, not away from the conflict of where life seems to take a curve away from the story that we think life should be about. When we feel that, we actually have to turn into that and expose ourselves to it full on. This is hard, but this is good. This is what our practice is. If you stay where you feel at ease, if you stay in a place where you're not challenged, then you're living in the story. I see a lot of folks who spend a lot of time doing what's conventional and self-enhancing to their brand, right? They've decided who they are. They've decided who they want people to think they are. And so anytime you try to put someone in a position of, instability or challenge their ability to kind of control the situation or control the spin, they immediately start to fall apart. So you need to look every day as you're living. There's always this opportunity or this Dharma gate open to us to walk into this grander world of not knowing, right? The place beyond convention or idea. If we're going to recognize the potential of our true nature, we're going to see it where the story ends and where our life begins. The idea is to put ourselves on the line completely. And all of you right now have things you're struggling with right now. If you follow convention, I promise, you're never going to open to the true wisdom of navigating that muddy road. Yeah? And the story is nowhere near as interesting as the life that's trying to present itself and break through that story. Robert Frost wrote a poem. Whenever you say Robert Frost wrote a poem, everyone already knows what poem you're going to recite, although he was a wonderful poet. This one's particularly moving, and I think it points to this. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveler. Long I stood, and looked down as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth, and took the other just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that passing there had warned them really about the same, and both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day. Yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. Shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and it has made all the difference. All of you, I promise, have a very well-worn road of rational thought, road of ideas, road of how you think life is supposed to be. Just take an opportunity with every step over the next coming days to see that other path, the one that's presenting itself to you right now, that path to manifesting as compassion, the harder road, right? The one that has challenge, but the one that actually brings you to your senses, brings you back home, brings you to your life. The path of the heart, the path of the bodhisattva. We need to take action now. This is it. This is it. And you're the one. Everybody needs to go and make it happen. Eh?